We're going to get started with the Wednesday wind down with Dan and Friends. I'm Dan Conger. He, him are my pronouns, and I am the host of this show. The idea is for folks that found it hard to get together due to COVID, people that like to get together and hike, maybe get together and drink a beer or another beverage, or just BS. We're going to do all of those tonight. And tonight I've got Jim with me. Jim, would you introduce yourself and tell us what you're drinking if you have anything?
I'm Jim Kurtz, and I'm drinking a Diet Coke.
Okay, cheers to that. Well, I'm drinking a Lagunitas, a little something. Tonight, we wanted to talk about satellite messengers and PLBs, personal locator beacons. They do similar things, but there's some big differences. And what's kind of cool is I carry a PLB. Jim carries a satellite messenger, and we kind of thought we'd bring to you some of the reasons and some of the reasons why we use them, some of what we like about each, some of what maybe I wish mine had that Jim's does. I'd kind of give you a compare and contrast. And as I mentioned, as we were waiting for the show to start, if you do a search on PLB versus satellite messenger or vice versa, you're going to find a slew of information. We're just going to offer you our perspective and maybe a starting point. So if you haven't gone down that rabbit hole, here's an introduction to it. So if you want to know, if you really want to take another dive into it, you can do some internet research.
So Dan, outdoorgearlab.com.
Okay, there we go.
It is a great place to compare and contrast different types. A lot of outdoor stuff, but they've got a good comparison on PLBs and communicators.
Okay. So just real broadly, just in case you completely have no idea what we're talking about, a personal locator beacon is an emergency beacon, and a satellite messenger has some of those capabilities, but also has the ability to send a message, perhaps do two-way messaging. We'll get into the specifics of those in just a minute, but I want to just kind of throw that out there. The intent is either for communication, emergency communication, or emergency, please come help type of basics. So with that said, I think the first question we want to ask is, why do you want a device? So Jim, why did you first decide that you wanted some sort of a device?
My wife told me I had to.
Okay. And were you going solo or were you going with somebody else at that time?
No, it realistically, I wanted one, and I wanted to be able to communicate with my wife to let her know everything was okay. And I wanted the emergency capabilities. So I went initially with a Spot.
So just what you're saying right there is saying what you want. That's going to take you on a path, right? And correct. There's a few choices on that path. Yep. And why I wanted a device was a little bit different. Fairly different. I really just wanted something for emergency contact. And I remember one time at work, somebody gave me a gift certificate to REI, and they said, I want you to get it. If you get it this, then I can text you work questions right away. I'm like, oh, BS. We're not doing that, right? I want to know when I'm gone, I'm gone. Yeah. But I've also been involved or been around or heard of more incidents. And I don't know if I've had any scares, but I've been older I get, the more I'm aware of, I have a limit, my finiteness. So I thought, for me, it was, if something really went south, I would want to take advantage of some technologies that are out there, and as opposed to being a complete Luddite, which for the longest time I was completely fine with not. I think the other thing that's worth touching about on this why is, and this is a good reminder for everybody, that, these devices are not a substitution for being prepared, right? This is not one of one essential, right? Well, I've got my device, so it's all good.
Yeah.
And I think that's another discussion that's come up in the community is, what do you owe to others and what is owed to you because you have a signaling device? I don't know. What's your opinion on that, Jim?
Well, there's a lot of discussion about it, especially there's a discussion on should people that use the SOS function be charged.
Yeah.
A lot of places it's free as long as it's not abused. If it's, I read an article about somebody down in the Grand Canyon saying the water tasted funny, so they hit SOS.
Right.
And the Rangers came down there, and it's like,
yeah,
so whatever.
That's right. That's definitely not right. And that the flip along those lines is just because you have a device doesn't mean like I'm tired, I'm ready for my helicopter ride now. And
right.
Right. And I think the other thing about any of these devices is because you've signaled or gotten word out, however you do that, does not mean it's like, okay, so I started the timer anytime now. Like, no.
Well, now the other thing about not charging is that some people are afraid that if they know they're going to be charged, they're going to wait till the last minute to hit the SOS button.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a fine line there on trying to make it practical. So you don't want to put the rescuers in harm's way also. But
right.
Just trying to make it easy.
So as you're approaching a decision for a device, or you're thinking you're getting to upgrade or replace the device, be thinking about the why. And I think that's a really good reason, a good thing to consider. Well, then, so let's get in a little bit of the nuts and bolts. I don't want to go too deep on this, but let's talk about what they do and how they work. So, Jim, how can you give us a lowdown on just the overview on how a satellite what a satellite messenger does, and let's talk about how they work.
Okay, so there's multiple types out there. There's one-way or two-way communications. What I use is the InReach Mini, and that's a two-way communicator. So when I turn it on, when I hit the function, it automatically syncs up with my phone. So now I've got my phone that I can use to type messages. It will send either a text or an email.
Now, question, will that work without your smartphone, or do you have to have your phone? Okay.
No, it's a serial keyboard on your device. So it's enter, enter. That's for each letter.
But there are devices on the market that only work with a smartphone, that are only a connection.
Correct.
Right.
Some of the newer ones are like that.
Sure.
They'll only work with the smartphone.
So using your smartphone makes it much more convenient. So you can send a text or send an email. That's one of the things that it can do. And then if it's a two-way, you can get that information back to you.
Correct. Now, for Garmin, on their text message, you can't reply directly from the text message when you receive it from me. But if you receive an email, you can directly reply from that.
Okay. So that's probably a low level communication. So there's certainly a convenience there. There's that check-in ability that you were kind of looking for, and that would probably fit that really well. So if let's say it's an emergency and somebody has had a compound fracture and they're in danger of losing their limb, you're going to send an email?
Nope.
Didn't think so.
That's when you go to the SOS function.
Okay.
And that goes directly to their they have Garmin has I think their center, I know it's in Texas, I think it's in Houston, but I'm not positive. And that they have a dedicated emergency site. So they'll get the message. The one thing nice with two-way communication, they will text you back to get more details. When I send a text, they also get my exact location within 10 meters. And but they're able to text back and ask me questions.
So what's happening then is your device is connecting to a satellite, a private satellite,
Yeah.
and then it's relaying the message to a ground location. And so basically they're using the satellite as the intermediate. It's never it's not point to point. It's
Correct.
up to the satellite and then back down.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's why we're calling it a satellite messenger.
Right. And well, the PLBs will work the same way as far as it's got to go to the satellite and then it has to go down to the ground station.
Right.
So
then what's battery life on that device with not being charged?
It's on mine, it's all over the place depending on how many features I'm using.
Mm-hmm.
Because I use it to run a track, because when I do a longer hike, I have people that can't get out and want to participate vicariously.
Yeah.
And so I set mine to, I think it's I can't remember, either every 10 minutes or every 20 minutes, it drops a breadcrumb on a map. And so I give a site and a password, and friends can log in and they can see what my adventure looks like.
So that could also be used as a last known location as well, even if you did
Correct.
SOS. Okay,
absolutely. Great. Yeah.
So I use a PLB, a personal locator beacon, and mine is an ACR PLB. It has a little antenna that we spring up the antenna, and there's the antenna. You're going to face it up. Has an SOS button, has a strobe, and a GPS built in. So the way PLB works, or the maritime version of it, is a EPIRB, and that's what this technology came off of. It uses it also uses a satellite. It's going to send a message up to the satellite and then relay it to a public agency that's going to monitor it, pass it through hands or two, and then it's going to bring the information that I've sent, that I pressed the button, and my location. So it has two pieces of information. And then additionally, that's the one frequency. I want to say that's like the 406 megahertz frequency. And then like a 100 megahertz frequency, a much shorter wavelength that's going to be much better for closer. Maybe, did I say that wrong? A frequency that's better for closer distances, has a homing beacon as well. So as rescuers approach me, they have a homing beacon which they can focus in on, as well as a beacon. This is a one and done. I press the button. All I get is I'm in trouble. That's all it says. Nothing else. And I think that's probably the biggest difference there, right? Is
right.
All this does is it does one thing. And, can you say that it does one thing? Does it do it better? I don't know, but that's all it does. So now brings me. Yes.
What's the battery life on it?
Oh, okay. Good deal. This actually probably has a 10-year battery life, but they say 5-year battery life. So after 5 years, I need to send it in. Well, I'm supposed to send it in and have it serviced. So for $150, I'm going to have the battery serviced. What was interesting is I looked online, and there's people that are like, you could do it for $10 and some silicone. Like, yeah, a person could. But the other thing that might happen is after 5 years, they don't make this model anymore. So do I want to upgrade to another model? We'll talk about the cost in a little bit, but we'll roll that battery cost in when we come to it. So I kind of touched on who managed it. So you said that yours is sold by Garmin, but it's also monitored by the same company, correct? A private company?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. It started out with Delorme, then Garmin bought Delorme. And so that was their site in Texas. And you and I were talking about before the show started, Garmin just bought one of the other.
It's Geos, GEOS. Yeah.
Yeah. The competitions site also.
Yeah. Good deal. We're at the halfway point, so it's a great time to put questions in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll definitely make sure we save time at the end to answer them. So the flip on that, where PLBs and EPIRBs, the maritime version, are managed by the government. So it's government satellites, not private satellites, and government agencies that monitor it. So one of the things I was looking at was if I have a false alert on this one, there's a button to undo it or to turn it off, but it doesn't take it back. So in my instructions, or somewhere in the instructions on here, it's like, yeah, here's the number for the Air Force, which is, I just put a sticker on there. Yeah, so make sure you call them. When I saw the Air Force commandant, like, oh yeah, don't mess around with this one.
Yeah.
So, depending how you believe in our government or don't, there's perhaps some pros, perhaps some cons on a private agency versus not. Now, I am going to throw out a story that I remember listening to about a guy sailing with his family across the Pacific, and he had 3 different methods of communication. He got swamped. One of them didn't work. The other one was he had a sat phone, and the private sat phone company sent him a new chip to his mail address on mainland and said, oh yeah, we're going to discontinue service on that SIM chip in the next 30 days. And he's out in ocean. So his sat phone didn't work. So all he had left was his EPIRB. So that's private, right? So that can happen on private, a lot less likely to happen on government. Yeah. Something to weigh. Okay. Let's talk cost. So equipment cost, where do, and I know there's going to be a range, but where does satellite messengers fall in the cost range?
So the price to buy them is the cheapest would be like the Spot, which is the older one, which is one-way communications, and that's about $150. Their two-way, which is the Spot X, is $250, and then InReach, the Mini is $350, and the Explorer which is the Garmin GPS unit with maps and with the communications built in, is about $450.
So I'll find that this version of the PLB or the version similar, I want to say I paid about $300 for it. They're now $325, $350 for about the replacement model. So I'm going to call the cost really similar. So in that maybe $250 to $350 range, somewhere in there. You could find something on sale. You could find the extra features. Right. So upfront cost, very, very similar. So then before I ask you the question on subscription, I'm going to say right now that is the only cost on a PLB. There's the one cost, and that's it. There's no subscription on it. So let's talk about subscriptions on satellite messengers. And I know there's going to be a couple of different tiers, right?
Yeah, it's all over the place. So when I got the Garmin InReach, there were, I think, 3 tiers, and you can switch between tier 2 and tier 3, or tier 1 and tier 2 at will. Before there was like a month's fee to switch. So what I would do is, after my hike in the summer, I would switch down to the lower tier, which was like $12 a month.
Right.
And then, so when I was using it heavily, I would go up to the higher tier 2, which was about $25 a month.
Right. And I think it's still 25. I didn't look at what the tier 3 was.
Right. Tier 3 is expedition kind of, and it includes a lot more messaging, and it may actually have the insurance built into it also.
Okay. So I kind of sat down and did a 5-year cost of ownership. So 5-year cost of ownership. So, if you take $25 a month times 12 months times 5 years, there's a chunk of money. And it was, does Rain Man in the room, but I want to say one figure was about $3,000 for 5 years. Plus, so there's perhaps an additional $2,000 to $3,000 over a 5-year period. And then, because now the reason I'm cutting it off at 5 years is at 5 years, I have to do a $150 battery refresh or replace. So am I skewing the numbers? Perhaps you just need to take that. So if you look back to my initial reason why, well, that's not really tipping it in my favor. Now but if it's fits with what you need, then it absolutely makes sense. And that's true of whoever's listening. Is if I think you start with the why, and then the expense or the cost isn't really such a big deal. Like, what do you want to get out of this? What do you need it to do for you?
So, and in my case, to be able to do 2 and 3 week hikes, I need to be able to communicate with my wife.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's your price of admission, for sure. I mean, let's put it this way: if I had to pay $3,000 or more, if I had to pay $5,000 a year to go hiking and backpacking, who do I pay?
Exactly.
Right.
So that was my thing. That the two-way communication was important for me because of that.
Yeah. So now I kind of want to. So I think we've kind of hit the why, but something else that I think is worth mentioning in the why or a benefit column is, and I'm going to start with the drawback on a PLB. Is a PLB, just kind of reiterate, is oh shit, that's all it is. It's just like it done hit the fan button. That's all it does. And rescuers don't know anything else about it. They just know about it. They just know that it happened. Now, it only does that one thing. So chances are it's going to do it better or perhaps more reliable. You got to statistically look at that. You can't look at it case by case. But I think a benefit, and one that kind of made me think hard about getting a satellite messenger role recently, was the ability to use it in those gray areas, right? Because on my trips, when we take this along, this is the only messenger we have, and everybody in my group knows that if we press that button, the trip is over, done, right? If we have to press it for anyone in our group, we're done. And if we have to press it for someone else we come across, well, now we don't have this because it only works once and then you send it in. Yeah. With a messenger, though, let's say someone in your group is coughing up blood. How bad is that? I don't know. Or if somebody has something that's kind of nebulous, like should we evacuate him? You have that capability of communicating with someone in the outside world, whether it's emergency professionals, a medical person that's in the family.
So, Dan, an interesting story. On a 10-day JMT section hike, we had someone, Patty, got a UTI. Oh,
sure.
And she has medicine for it because it's something that she gets occasionally. We got to Muir Trail Ranch and we're going through the hiker buckets. And there's something in there that kind of makes her think that, oh gosh, that seems like that would work. I got on my inReach and text Yolanda and asked her to look it up. And within about a half hour, she texts back, yes, that will work for an infection.
Nice.
And so that would have been one of the gray areas where she might have needed to get off the trail,
sure.
Because if it had gotten worse,
right,
and we were out away from Muir Trail Ranch isn't exactly civilization, but it's close enough. So it was one of those things where it was helpful.
Okay, so we've only got a few minutes left. So real briefly, we wanted to bring up the concept of front country. So it's so easy to be focused on back country and what if I don't have coverage. But real briefly, Jim, you mentioned this the other day about phones. Okay,
so smartphones today, in the late 1990s, early 2000s, the FCC regulations said any chipset that goes into a phone has to be able to dial 911
What year was that? I'm sorry.
Carrier, pardon?
What year?
Early 2000s, about
Okay.
Whether it's your carrier or not, it has to be able to dial 911. So what I tell everybody is, okay, you get out there, you don't appear to have any cell service, go ahead and dial 911 and let it ring, because it will try your carrier first. If it sees no bars, it's supposed to go to whoever. You may have T-Mobile, you may have Verizon chipsets.
Start with the simplest stuff first. And for the longest time, I didn't want to carry my smartphone. So I hung on. Do you remember these things? I hung on to one of these, hello, 1980s calling. And if you keep it charged, right, you can keep this in your pack for forever. And well, these will hold a charge like ridiculously long. So, okay, well, let's take a look through some of the questions. And
the other thing was Dave just put up was you can now text 911 in San Diego. They're rolling it out nationwide, but so I can't tell you what counties have it and what don't, but San Diego has it now.
Okay. So Robin Nikki asked, have you ever had to use the SOS? I have not. I do know that ACR has a thing. If you use it for an SOS, a genuine SOS, they will replace it for free. And they just want to use your story. I'm going to say, here's how we saved someone's bacon, right? So
in my case, I did not use it. I probably should have going back, but I saw a fire starting along the PCT. It was just barely smoking at the time I went back by. Instead of hitting SOS, I texted Dave Cowan at work and told him where I was and have him call the Forest Service.
Sure.
And it was one of those things that it took long enough. I probably should have gone ahead and hit the SOS. Just because of the amount of time between Dave and I talking and then Dave trying to call the Forest Service. If I'd hit the SOS, then the people in Texas would have had to worry about it, and I wouldn't have.
Here's a comment that I think is kind of good, and then I'll want to come back on a closing thought. What's that? Who said this? Doug said that two things. He says he believes that PLBs are more reliable at sending an SOS. I would say was definitely true with Spot, and it's harder to say. I'd almost have to research again and see if that's the case, because I know there's continuing improvements, and part of Spots, they had a tarnish on the reputation for a while about reliability.
And also they did not let you know if it went through or not.
Yeah. Right. I thought I had one other topic, but so I think if you start with the why, that'll kind of answer a lot of what direction you're going to go with it. Right. Yeah. I do believe, and this is another comment from Doug, that as the communicator market grows and becomes more people start getting access to them, they will become more reliable. Well, they will have more features and the price will come down. And if that's the case, I might be in the market for this if I could have, or maybe I might carry both. Who knows, right? Maybe I'll carry one that has an expired battery, and I'll carry a messenger, and I have both. So that's a concept. But for right now, a PLB works well for me, and a satellite messenger seems to work well for Jim. And
so InReach is going over to the new Iridium 2 satellites. Last year, Garmin sent out a real detailed form for all of their subscribers to tell them what features they would like to see. Do you want to be able to send pictures? Do you want to, you're limited to 132 characters. Do you want more characters?
Can you post to Instagram?
Enhance it. So,
yeah, and that's which that could be that convenience portion, quite literally being able to post to social media might be what people want when.
Well, Garmin already can.
Yeah.
I could do it directly to Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. It's built into their system.
Which is there's a certain irony, right? That we've got this $1 billion communication network to put up pictures of cats and grasshoppers and okay, so we're going to leave on that high note. If we have any links that are worthwhile, I'll put them in the YouTube notes. Thank you for tuning in. Hopefully we're a little bit enlightening and you got some information out of us tonight. Jim, thanks for joining. We do appreciate it. Cheers till I can see you on the trail again.
Yep.
And everybody else, happy trails.